How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the Blue Shifting. Welcome back to Chaos Head. And yeah, last episode. So it was very wordy, but we got a lot of good information. We also found out that Sua, like the band's understudy, assistant detective, has been apparently captured and he's being held at the hospital. So that's going on, and Band's also been getting like threatened. He's been seemingly harassed by just random people around him, constantly saying like his name and saying or being really obnoxious. That's been interesting. And then we also saw that Rimi is really sad, but she's decided to move forward with, I guess, whatever the plan is. And we also saw that Taku's really he's really losing it. He was told he's a delusion, and he's like struggling with that. And he tried to reach out to his friend to get a little confirmation, and his friend's like, by the way, my girlfriend pointed out something. She's like, why did you start hanging out with him so recently? And he's like, I didn't think it was that recently, but then I realized it's only been like 6 months since we started doing stuff. So why do I feel like I've known you for longer than that? Like, what's going on there? And then that was like the last straw. Taku was prepared to end it all, but that didn't even happen. It didn't like pan out. So now we're going to be here. We're going to kind of see where his mental state's not great, so we're going to see how that plays out, but we're going to move forward here. We're going to see how things play out, and we're going to see what happens. I'm not too sure what to expect at this point. I mean, Shogun's moving, but we also know Shogun's Taku, like original Taku. With a revelation like that, it's making me feel like we're starting to run towards a finale of some kind. I don't know if it's an imminent finale per se, but I feel like we've got enough answers that we now can see things really get rolling. And we also know that the next experiment's coming up, which is supposed to be even bigger, more shocking, and like I think this says, so the first one that had like 8 deaths, the second one had like 102 deaths or something, and then they estimated this one to be somewhere in the thousands. So it's gonna get spicy, and I imagine it's gonna happen really soon. So let's see how this all pans out, and what can be done and what can't be done. We also got to see some connections too. It looks like almost all the Gigamaniacs have been through that hospital/psychiatric institution and rehab facility not too long ago, like within like their lifespans. And it's like those profiles that they talked about the Noah needing probably is from all the characters that we've seen, at least most of them. So let's just push on and see what happens. So let's start. Having lost all my willpower before I realized it, I found myself back in my base. I didn't know how I'd gotten here after failing to die at Yamanote Dori. My memory was hazy.
このコンテナって誰がどうやってここまで運んだんだろう。
You know, other questions that I remember asking way at the beginning. This container on top of a building. How does it have power? How does it have AC? Like, those were good questions. It was something I'd never even thought about until now, but now that I couldn't help but notice how odd it felt. The more I thought about it, the more the feeling encroached upon my mind. The moment I closed the door, the room went pitch black. Leaning against the door, I simply stood there, still as could be. Inside the quiet room, all that could be heard was the sound of my shallow breathing and the hum of the fan inside my PC. I thought that maybe surrounding myself in darkness would make things easier, since I wouldn't have to be conscious of my pitiful self, but it had the exact opposite effect. Unable to see anything, and with nothing else to listen to, Rimi's cruel words from before repeated endlessly in my mind.
あなたは妄想の存在なんだよ。
Can you imagine that, though? Like, imagine, like, your whole existence was a lie. Not even just, it's on the scale of learning that you were adopted, but you never knew until you were like an adult. Only on such an extreme level, because like you weren't even adopted, you were adopted into reality. My own moans disgusted me more than ever before. I felt nauseous. I was already a disgusting freak even before all this, but if my very existence itself was warped, I was already beyond saving. I wanted to disappear completely. As I tripped over the trash scattered across the floor, I stumbled my way to the end of the room. I turned the lights on, scaring away the dark, then grabbed the Sierra figure, post-awakening version, that just so happened to enter my line of sight and sat down on my chair. I brought her close to my chest. This art on the computer screen looks a little different over there. She was really small and she was really hard too. Didn't breathe, nor did she speak. She didn't have the warmth of a 3D girl had. Despite that, she was all I had left. So another question again, it's like, do we delude ourselves? Rimi said not to. But he needs a pick-me-up, doesn't he? Do we do it? At this point, I don't want to do negatives anymore. You know what though? Okay. It's gonna sound crazy. But there's a big part of me that wants to see what happens if we actually listen to what Rimi was saying. I don't think she has our best intents at heart, but she might have a point. And I feel like we need to have a true confrontation with Shogun, if we can. The delusions are kind of fun, but I'm not sure if I want to risk it anymore. I think we're going to proceed without it. Unless, I might save it too. Like maybe I'll do like one or two, I'll do a couple more, but I'll save them for like the times I really want to do it. So, not right now. Rimi had left me. I didn't know where Nanami was. Senna had attacked me. Kozupi hadn't protected me. Yua was my enemy. And Ayase was hospitalized. These were the only girls I knew the names of, and none of them would do anything for me. Reality was harsh. Didn't give a damn about a monster like me. With my trembling hands, I tightened my grip on Sierra-tan, even tighter, tight enough to break her. I wanted to disappear completely. If that were how I thought, shouldn't I just act? Ultimately, I was just playing the tragic protagonist right now. Even if I was overcome with sorrow, no one was going to empathize with me. Nobody was looking at me. Nobody was here. They had all abandoned me. No, I didn't have any real bonds. There was no one in my life I could count as a friend. I didn't even have family. It was a fake after all.
オタクばっかり並べてる。
Just shut up and die already. Yeah, sheesh, dude. Calm down. There's gotta be something we can do with this. Sitting down Sierra-tan, I sluggishly got up from my chair and found a plastic cord laying under my bed. I picked it up, made a ring big enough for my head to fit in, and tied it to the other end of a pipe of the loft bed. Bro.
死んでやる、死んでやるよ、死んでやるんだからな。
There was no one here to stop me, but of course there wasn't, so I was the only one in the room. I managed to secure the plastic cord quite well. Dying is surprisingly easy, I thought to myself. I put my head inside the ring and tightened it around my neck. Sheesh. Oh boy. I guess, warning? This is pretty dark already. Normally you couldn't hang yourself just from a loft bed, it wasn't high enough. But if I kicked my legs out from under me, then the height wasn't an issue. What I needed was the resolve to die. So he's like, he would have to like be able to resist his own instincts long enough to make it happen, which is not very likely. Now at the end, I looked over Sierra-tan, who smiled at me from atop my desk. Starting with Sierra-tan, my wife who's lined up on the shelf would be the ones that would see me to the other side. I was struck by sorrow. Loneliness filled my heart. I felt a twinge in my nose.
さよなら。
Placing all my weight on the cord, I kicked my leg out. The cord started strangling me. It was putting immense pressure on my neck and it dug into my flesh hard. It hurts. Before I knew it, I was unconsciously trying to relieve the pressure from my fingers. I moved my leg back into place and went to stand up. But if I did that, it wouldn't be able to die. If I don't keep all my weight on the cord, it won't be strangled, so I endured it. My throat hurt. Rather than being unable to breathe, the pain of it digging into my neck was the worst part. Hurry up and die already. Gosh darn it, fetch me this episode. The suffering continued. It was so immense I couldn't even pass out. My body swayed aimlessly. Around and around it swayed, my legs kicking up and down. The pipe of my loft bed started creaking. And suddenly my body lost all support. And I violently crashed into the floor, landing flat on my butt. The impact I felt with my bones and my pelvis made me writhe in pain. And at the same time, I was desperately sucking in air. As tears welled up in my eyes, I looked up at the cord that had been tied to my bed, only to find that it had snapped in two at the center.
なんだよそれ。なんなんだよそれは。
Of all times for me to fail, why even at the very end when it mattered most? I knew I was beyond saving, good-for-nothing loser that hadn't managed to accomplish even a single noteworthy thing in his entire life, not that I was a person to begin with. But to fail even when trying to die was just too much. Why couldn't I die? Even though I wanted to die, Now that I knew how painful it was to be hanged, I never would have the will nor courage to attempt it again.
楽に死ぬ方法を誰か教えてよ。
Seeing my shameless tendency to rely on others rear its head once more, I was hit with a wave of nausea. I really was completely and entirely useless. Sheesh. Oh, now this is gonna get good. This is gonna be interesting. Not that that wasn't interesting, but it was just freaking dark. Human presence quickly faded from the hospital cloaked in night. Perhaps after taking in all the life and death during the day, it took some time for it to regain balance. At this time, the hospital housed neither the scent of life nor the scent of death, only a quiet emptiness reigned. Ban Yusuji chuckled to himself as he realized the odd nature of his thoughts. Despite the minor self-flagellation, it did indeed feel especially quiet tonight. It was not yet time for the lights to be on, leaving the corridor steeped in darkness. There was not even a single sign of any nurse. Immediately after stepping foot in the lobby, Ban was hit with a very bad feeling. There's no logic reasoning behind it. It just simply was what one might call a detective's gut. My gut is usually right for the most part. In his mind, he believed it to be oddly superstitious thought, but that may have been simply a way to dismiss the feeling. While the taxi had driven him to the hospital, Ben had attempted to call Sua's phone number numerous times. But each and every one of them had failed, which only served to demonstrate his junior's precarious situation all the more clearly. There was no time to waste. He had to find the place where Sua was being held within the large hospital and rescue him. All while not being detected by the kidnapper. Well, it's obviously a trap, though. The linoleum floor would have made his footsteps echo. To avoid this, Ben took off his shoes before entering the lobby. Winter was swiftly approaching at this time of year, the fact that Ben was readily made aware of when the chill from the floor sent shivers up his soles. Who said that? The sound of an automatic front door echoed throughout the room, followed by the voice of a girl calling out Ben's name. That's creepy. Oh, it's Yua. The surprise of seeing her in the lobby put Ben at a loss for words. He hurried toward her in a panic. Beyond her glasses, her eyes threw anxious glances around her surroundings.
おい、なんでついてきたんだ。身を隠せって言っただろうに。
すみません。でも、私。
What if she kidnapped him? Wouldn't that be the big twist? She actually is evil? Ben looked for any sign of Momose, but she was nowhere to be seen. Realizing she'd come alone, Ben scratched the top of his head with a concerned expression.
今すぐ戻れ。これは遊びじゃねえんだぞ。
それは。分かっているつもりです。
分かってるなら帰るんだ。
Oh, here he comes. Right as he spoke, the creaking sound came from the hallway across the lobby. In the very center of this empty, dark hallway, slowly an empty wheelchair made its way towards Ben and Yua. Then, at the nearly same exact time, someone could be heard running up the stairs.
とにかくユアちゃんは帰れ。いいな。
Before he had even finished giving his warning, Ben had already started running. He followed the footsteps up the stairs without waiting for Yua's answer. Given his typically languid demeanor, the speed at which Ben moved was like nothing anyone could have imagined. That's pretty good. As he followed the footsteps, Ben found himself on the roof of the outpatient ward. There were lines of shrubbery installed on the rooftop, forming a garden of sorts. It was most likely a space of healing for the patients there, but regrettably, as the lights were off, Ben could not see what kind of flowers were blooming there. Given the fact Ben was on the roof, it was only natural that the wind would blow strong. With ragged breath, Ben quickly surveyed his surroundings. Without a shadow of a doubt, this was where the man behind the footsteps must have run, but now he was nowhere to be seen. Was I led here on purpose? The man had fled while causing sounds that seemed purposeful. Ben could not think of any other reason for him to have done that aside from leading him here. Ben did not have his gun on him, and he was apprehensive about being unarmed. He looked for something that could serve as a weapon, but to no avail. With a gulp, he wiped away the sweat on his forehead with his fingers. Step by step, he made his way to the center of the garden. Here and there, Ben could see a few hiding spots tucked within the shadows of the branches and shrubbery. He put himself into a full alert status, one in which he could respond to a potential attacker no matter what direction they came from. The garden was set up in a circular fashion with benches piled or placed around it in accordance with its shape. Ben strained his eyes to look at each bench in order, and one of these benches his eyes landed upon a strange object. Keeping a close look at his surroundings, he slowly approached the bench. Is it going to be the Darth Spider mask? And as he got closer to it, its shape was made clear to him. It is! How'd I know? It's around the size of a soccer ball, round and dark. It was a severed human head? Ben, who had investigated countless murder cases involving dismemberment in the past, quickly recalled the image of a photo he'd once seen. The bad feeling in his chest grew stronger and stronger. Recognizing the possibility of it being his junior's head, vengeful anger and furious rage towards the perpetrator bubbled up from within. Ben gritted his teeth and drew even closer to the bench. The object did not move a single inch. Then the wind of the night continued to blow. Oh, fetch me. Then Ben heard a gunshot. He froze in response to the sudden sound. Normally, a detective would duck and investigate the direction of the sound to come from, but was unable to do even that. No. In actuality, there was no need for him to do that anymore. Feeling a burning heat in his chest, Ben touched it with his hand. A slippery sensation. Something was flowing out from his body, accompanied by the very particular smell of blood. Gosh darn it. Only a short moment following the gunshot did Ben's mind begin to register pain within him. He had been shot. The moment he realized this, all strength left his legs. Gosh darn it. Unable to remain standing, he collapsed onto the ground. The footsteps from earlier were approaching him. As his vision grew blurry, he desperately looked up at the person drawing near. Is it really Sua? Is he actually the one who shot him? A dark shadow with a gun in his hand. A shadow so dark Ben could not recognize its face. A voice came. A voice he recognized. Oh my gosh. Why? Ben collapsed in a heap. He was met with the ridicule of one man, Sua Mamoru. Why?
Sua.
What the why? Why? Like, what stake does he possibly have in this?
お前が俺を
そうっす。いやー、祝初発砲ってところっすか?
As he laughed into the night, Sua casually picked up the object from the bench.
ちなみに先輩、やけにこれに注目してたっすけど、そんなに珍しかったんすか? ダーススパイダーのヘルメット。
Sua, who had now returned to Ben, held the dark helmet in front of the detective's face in an ostentatious manner. Sheesh, look at his face. Yeah, he came to save you. As Ben laughed, his vision grew blurrier and blurrier. Both his arms and legs felt extremely cold. His chest hurt, but not just from the physical pain. Guess we should get a screenshot of that, though that wouldn't be a good thumbnail because it'd spoil everything. He also felt an intense gaze upon him, but he didn't have more strength to conclude whether it was Sua's or someone else's. Knowing that his life would last only a few more minutes, Ben forced his growingly heavy body to face upward. With arms and legs outstretched, only the night sky lay above him. The sky overcast, with no stars to be seen, but even if there were any left in the sky, Ben had long since lost the ability to see them. After a few coughs, the taste of blood spread through his mouth.
バカなデカだ。
Sheesh.
だが俺はお前のこと結構勝手だ。
Aw.
自分は先輩が鬱陶しくてしょうがなかったっすよ。
まあ気持ちはわかる。
Ban's breathing grew increasingly shallow. Only a faint wheezing could be heard leaking from his throat. Before long, he'd been unable to perceive anything anymore.
何者なんだお前。
With his consciousness fading in and out, Ban spoke one final question. In response, Suwa pointed the muzzle at Ban, then gave his reply.
魔法使いっす。
Oh, what?
バカが。
Before either of them could realize it, the wind had stopped blowing. The darkness had quickly turned to a place of serenity. Within it, two figures remained frozen still. But that too remained only for an ephemeral moment. Sua's finger, now curled around the trigger, slowly moved inward.
先輩に信仰の救いあれ。
Holy crap. Is he also a Giglomaniac then? Darn it, I liked Ban a lot. That sucks. Oh boy. Yeah. Lol. After all this time, only now you become Chuni, Lamau. That's what Grim's saying, of course. Kirkham. He's just saying kill me, kill me, kill me all the time. Or were you rejected by an IRL girl? In that case, I've got some good news for you. Kill me again. If you stay a virgin till 30, he's gonna say you turn into a wizard. You become a wizard. Oh boy. Well, this is a depressing episode. That's a pro tip. That says Grim. Kill me. Doesn't help, I think I'm getting sick. Speaking of pro tips. Apparently there's going to be a festival in about an hour. It'll be a Shibuya Scramble Crossing. I'm just sad. Jeez, you're annoying. What the fetch, lol. Well, if that's what you want, you should go. You're a celebrity, so you'll be the center of attention. Maybe you can get someone there to kill you? Turning off my PC monitor, I hugged my knees to my arms.
鬼
Oh,
殺してよ、
what?
誰か。
Okay. So remember, Rimi talked about how we need to save our sister. Now she's gonna be here? What the fetch is happening?
鬼ってば
In my hand was Sierra Tan, my one and only ally.
おーい開けろ
Perhaps because I've been holding her in my sweaty hand for a while, her slender limbs were all sticky, and not only that, but her arms had been bent.
こら開けろ
That voice. Couldn't be. How?
バカ鬼
There was no way I'd misheard that. Out of every girl that visited my base, there was only one that would scream outside of it like that. Nanami was here? I was somewhat surprised at how different I felt in response to that fact. I just didn't care. What would her coming here while I was going this far gone even do for me? Besides, it wasn't like I was going out of the ordinary for Nanami to come here. Hadn't Rimi said that she was going to rescue her anyway?
開けないとひどいんだからね
The noise was starting to irritate me. Just leave the monster like me alone. Nanami should have been focused on her right hand, not me, now that I knew what had happened to it. Didn't have it in me to talk to anyone anymore.
鬼
Let her in, dude. But she was being too loud, so I was forced to get up from my chair and head for the door. The door seemed oh so far away from me, which made me realize I was scared to see her. Okay. Hi. You look normal, but I'm like suspicious of that? The second I opened the door, Nanami shivered a little, then fell silent.
鬼
Even though she'd been shouting at the top of her lungs just a few moments ago, she was acting strangely meek now. I was confused. I'd barely even seen Nanami act like this. So a thought crossed my mind. Was this Nanami real?
いるなら早く出てよ入っていい
He didn't answer. Ignoring her question, I headed back into my room and sat down on the sofa. I once again took hold of my Saratan figure and gripped her tight, so tight in fact that my hand hurt slightly, but didn't matter because the pain too was a delusion. Nanami followed after me, entering the room in silence. Once she came inside, as if she didn't know what to do at this point, she moved aside the magazine scattered on the floor and squatted down. She's like crying a bit. What? Can you tell us what's going on? She didn't speak, even though normally she'd have started scolding me the second she got the chance. She looked at a fixed point in the ground as she hugged her knees close and a desperate look on her face. A bandage was barely visible beneath the sleeve on her right wrist. I was about to say, if you sit like that, I'll see your panties, but stopped myself. This Nanami had to be a delusion. I was one too, after all. Everything in this world was made up of delusions. Delusions developed only within my mind. Both me and this delusion and I was looking at were fake. So if I saw her panties, or even if she walked around buck naked, it made no difference to me whatsoever. Ugh. Averting my gaze from Nanami, I looked up at the ceiling. With no particular goal in mind, I started counting the rusty spots. I didn't want to look at Nanami, only to feel empty if I did. Silence took over, only the sound of the fan and my PC could be heard throughout the cramped room. Even though every time Nanami came to my base, it turned into my own personal hell, one that was annoying as could be, I still felt that way, but those memories too must have been delusions.
ねえ鬼何か喋ってよ
A voice devoid of all energy. This couldn't be Nanami, therefore she must be a delusion.
どうして何も言ってくんないの包帯のこととか気になんないの
I concentrated on my task of counting the rusty spots. I don't care, you're a delusion. Even if you were the real one, I'm completely unrelated to you. I'm a delusion, so I'm not related to you by blood. It's so funny, because like, remember how when he first heard about the D-swords and how crazy that idea seemed, he was pretty much trying his hardest to just reject it. Like, out of fear, he pursued it because he was told it could save him, but he still, like, even to this dying breath for a while, he just was like, no, it's clearly just a fake. But now, he's been told once that he's a delusion, and he's just decided it's true. Like, I get that, like, it'd be shocking, and there's a lot of stuff that lines up with it, but I feel like he's just, like, it's odd that he's not, like, even remotely trying to resist the idea.
何か言ってお願いだから
The sound of rustling clothes rang throughout the quiet room, followed by a ringing in my ears. My head hurt. These two were delusions, though, so I paid them no mind. Whether Nanami was throwing off her clothes, taking off her bandage, or doing something unthinkable, it wouldn't surprise me. It didn't care. This was delusion, so was I. Even if there was no concrete line of logic, it wasn't the obvious conclusion to reach, and that was the end of that.
ほら、見てよ。
I wasn't going to look. I was too afraid.
青技、だいぶ消えてくれたな。最初はすごく腫れてたんだよ。バスケしてて、転んで打撲したんだ。見てもくれないの？ナナってお兄に心配されたこと一度もないな。逆はしょっちゅうなのに。
Oh boy, come on! I didn't want to see anything. I didn't want to think about anything.
ねえ、ナナミ。
Without meeting her eyes, I called out to my sister, or the girl whose identity I wasn't sure of.
お前が本物でも偽物でもどっちでもいいよ。
Right now, I only wanted one thing.
僕を殺してくれないか。
Sheesh. Can you imagine saying that to your sibling or hearing that from your sibling? Whether it's real or not. At the front entrance to AH Tokyo General Hospital, Kusunoki Yua fixed her gaze beyond the automatic door. Having been told by Ban to get out of here now, she had reluctantly complied and went outside. However, her worry, she could not bring herself to go any farther. Ban had followed the mysterious figure and vanished over the hospital stairs. It had not even been 3 minutes since then, but hoping Ban had already returned, Yua peeked into the lobby. This was after Ban had headed into the hospital alone. Yua had ignored Momose's order and followed him here. All that she could get one step closer to the truth behind her little sister's death and the true perpetrator. The person that had told Ban to back off over the phone had abducted Ban's junior. Someone who must have been named Suasan was most likely the same one that had killed her sister Mia. That was the feeling Yua had, and as such she had been unable to hold back her impulsive emotions. Despite Ban's various warnings about the dangers involving herself with this case, Yua had come nonetheless. Moreover, it was not as though Yua would be able to achieve anything by coming here. She was nothing more than a powerless high schooler, after all. Somewhere in her mind, Yua hoped the band would simply come running gallantly back after apprehending the culprit. If that happened, she would have the opportunity to question them directly. Why did my sister have to die? That was the one thing Yua had to ask. Suddenly, Yua felt a gaze upon her, and she nervously scanned her surroundings. It had not even been 2 hours since the sun had set, yet oddly enough, the hospital's front entrance was eerily quiet. Right next to it was the urgent care entrance, which also served as an entrance for emergencies, and yet not even there housed any signs of human presence. A train gently ran along the tracks beside the hospital. Hardly any cars passed by in the large street in front of it, and there was nary a single passerby. Houses between the sleepless cities of Shibuya and Shinjuku, where Yua was now, was akin to an abyss of darkness formed in the intersection between two bursts of blinding light. No figure could conceivably be responsible for a gaze that was visible. Holding back her anxiety, Yua placed her hand on her chest and let out a small sigh. Following this, she found herself glancing over at the hospital ward. What the fetch? Is that supposed to be your sister? Or is that you? Because she looks identical, but like they were twins, right? There, at the entrance to the hospital ward, stood a single girl. The lights were out, rendering the area very dimly lit, and yet the girl's figure was clearly visible amid the darkness.
Mia-chan.
Without intending to, Yua whispered that name. Her sense of reason told her it was impossible, but nonetheless she could not keep those words from escaping. The girl was a mirror image of her, a mirror image of her twin sister that was no longer of this world. Moreover, Yua recognized the clothes she was wearing. She knew almost for a fact that they were her sister's clothes. The possibility for perhaps being a ghost filled Yua with fear that made her hair stand on end. Suddenly, the girl turned and headed for the automatic door, making the entrance to the hospital ward. The moment she grew close enough, the door quietly slid open. It isn't a ghost. Yua was in shock, but before she could register anything more, she promptly ran after the girl and into the hospital ward. Sounds like a delusion to me. Inside, perhaps due to it being past closing time, it was even quieter than outside. Each time Yua took a step forward, her footsteps echoed throughout the depths of the corridor. It had been just the same as the outpatient ward, but the fact that it was even quieter here made her very uneasy. The girl had disappeared up the stairs. Yua heard a faint sound of laughter coming from ahead. It's like a scene straight from a ghost story. She gonna witness Sua? With that in her mind, Yua cautiously made her way up the stairs step by step. She arrived on the second floor. Glancing around the corridor, she did not see anybody. Something she had expected. But just as she was suspecting that it might have been a mere illusion... Oh, that's not creepy at all. The girl's laughter sounded from the floor above. That voice, the sound of its laughter, was identical to what you had heard time and time again in the past. Climbing the third floor and looking down the corridor, Yua saw a girl with the same face as her, standing there. One of the victims of the first NewGen case, the group dive, her little sister who should have died 2 months ago. Kusunoki Miya stood right there with an unmistakable sense of presence.
So.
Yua removed her glasses, rubbed her eyes. However, even after putting her glasses back on, she looked at that Miya was still there.
Miya-chan, nano? Doumou?
A voice so clear it could never be an illusion. And that intrepid smile on her face, that laughter in the air, it was exactly the same as Yua remembered from her sister. Miya had always acted the very same way. In order for her to be the wrongdoer in the eyes of the other, she had to laugh like that all the time.
Miya-chan.
Aww.
本当に私がミヤであなたがユアだと思う?
That's implying something. What? Are you saying that she's Yua but actually is Miya? Like she flipped somehow?
どういうこと?
Yeah, that's disturbing to think about.
もし逆だったら?
Oh god, that's Persona 5 all over again.
あなたはミヤ。死んだのはユア。殺したのはあなた。
You was the one who died and you're the one who killed her. What?
何を言っているの?
Yeah, that makes no sense though.
あなたは親に愛される姉が疎ましくてネットで殺人を依頼したのよ。しかも自殺に見せかけるように見ず知らずの4人も一緒に飛び降りさせた。
That doesn't make any sense.
あなたは姉になりすまして妹の死を悲しみ涙を流しているふりをしながらこれまで姉が独占していた親の愛を手に入れて心の中ではほくそ笑んでいる。違うわ。
Yeah, no, definitely not.
私はユアよ。誰がそれを証明するの? 私はユアのはず。
Oh no.
でも確信が持てない。私を私だと証明するものって何?
That's interesting.
顔? 名前? 記憶? 自分のことなのに。自分で自分を証明するなんて不可能よ。私がミヤだっていう可能性もあるの。
Oh, this is gonna break your brain. Holy
あ
crap.
なたはいろいろと調べていたじゃない。多重人格、無遊病、記憶捏造、それから妄想。
Oh. The concepts Yua herself had been looking into prior to now just showed just how real the ambiguity of memories and perhaps recollection truly was. She didn't know nor understand herself anymore. What was she? Yua cradled her head as she shook it in denial.
あなたは誰?
Was she Yua, who had always played the good child and was automatically loved and cherished by her parents? Was she Miya, who had always played the bad child, who was actively hated by her parents, the child who, despite her actions being her own, often cast her sister's glare of jealousy, of hate?
さあ、私も。
Miya, or possibly Yua, guided Yua, or possibly Miya, as she walked down the corridor soundlessly. Oh, I'm making my brain's breaking.
私と同じ目に遭いなさい。
Oh no. Yua and Miya, identical twins, faced a mirror image of one another, and the boundary that served to differentiate the two was growing more and more blurred. How did anybody, like, if this is a manipulation from, like, Shogun or something, like, how would he know so much about her to be able to manipulate her like this? That's what's really crazy. Two enormous boxes stood tall within the darkness. And yet, compared to the nearby Shinjuku skyscrapers, they were akin to a small child looking up at their parents. The hospital roof, that was where Yua found herself, having been led there by Mia. A section of the towering fence had been torn open just wide enough to allow a person to fit through it. Whether that was intentional effort, none could say. Mia and Yua, after moving through the torn section of the outside of the fence, now stood at the edge of the roof. Before them, the outpatient ward, that is the location that was lower to the hospital ward, the entire breadth of the roof garden was visible to them. However, the lights were still turned off, so if there were people there, Yua would be unable to know. The wind blew strongly on the rooftop. The gale made Yua and Mia's soft hair flutter along with the hems of their clothes.
私たちはもともと一つだったんだから。また戻るだけ。一歩を踏み出せば、あなたは私になる。
Oh gosh. That's terrifying. Yua, her eyes vacant of all light, mechanically whispered those emotionless words. Spreading her arms to maintain her balance, she endured the upward rising wind. Beside her, Mia, arms spread just as Yua's were, looked at her sister and smiled.
耐える必要なんてないよ。あなたは私の痛みを知らなくちゃならない。さあ、飛んで。そうすれば、
Oh, she's so creepy.
私もあなたも同じ痛みを共有するわ。
That is like a terrifying face there. Holy crap.
私はどっちなの？私？あなた？それを聞いても意味はないわ。どっちにしたって。私は飛ぶ。
Oh man. All hesitation left within Yua disappeared, and so moving her foot forward, she. Oh. A gunshot tore through the dark night. And within a start, Yua came to her senses. Realizing where she was, she let out a frightful scream. The sheer height of where she stood immediately disoriented her, making her lose her balance. She very nearly fell, but in her desperation, she shot her hand toward the fence behind her, grabbing onto it. Because of this, she successfully managed to avoid being met with a terrible fate. The gunshot had come from the roof of the outpatient ward, leading her to look at it once more. In the circular clearing on the roof garden, she managed to spot multiple figures. There were two of them. One was on the ground, the other stood beside them.
Bansan.
Had the detective shot someone, or had the detective been shot by someone?
何をしてるの？どうして私と同じ痛みを味わおうとしないの？そんなの卑怯よ。ずるいわ。ミヤちゃん。違うわ。私はユアよ。ユアは、私。ミヤはあなた。あなたは一体、何なの？私はあなたの望んだもの。
Yeah.
あなたは私の望んだもの。
Oh. That's terrifying. The music's terrifying. That face is really terrifying. Holy crap. Mia reached for her sister. Placing her hands around Yua's neck, she began to strangle her. Yua felt a strong pressure on her throat. She could no longer breathe. Mia was no ghost. She definitely had a body of flesh and blood now. She was strangling Yua with it.
お願い。死んでよ。今日ぐらい、私のお願いを聞いて。いつも我慢してきたんだから。
Yua's vision grew crimson. She reached her hands out to the air in front of her, but found herself unable to grasp anything. I'm going to die. Watched with the most extreme dread, using her whole body, Yua called upon her strength she did not even know she had when she had tried desperately to break free from Mia's grip. But Mia was too strong. Yua was unable to move even a single inch. Even Yua's thoughts were dyed crimson, felt as though her consciousness was being coated in a layer of vicious blood. In a desperate frenzy, she shook her head so violently her glasses fell from her face, and at that point onward, the outside observer, Yua and Mia, were no longer distinguishable. It did not matter who killed whom. The result was arbitrary. If Yua died, all Mia would have to do is become Yua. If Mia died, all Yua would have to do is become Mia. Feelings of resignation suddenly spread through Yua's heart before her eyes on what was Mia, or possibly Yua's face, seeping with anger. Not wanting to see such a sight, she looked away. And what vaulted in her red field of view was the shrubbery from the flowers adorning the roof garden. It's a sword! In her mind, Yua felt that there was a shadow among the flowers, the likes of which she had never seen before, though perhaps it was simply an illusion. She had dropped her glasses in the struggle after all. However, no longer able to breathe and suffering from so much pain, the faint sense of peace gradually rose from within her. Despite her thoughts of simply surrendering herself and peacefully passing on, her instinctive desire not to die denied her that peace. It made Yua extend her hand toward that desperate shadow. Her distance from the shrubbery was about 2 meters. How she was now, there was no way she'd reach it, even if she were to extend her hand. And yet, her fingertips touched something hard and cold. She then grasped it, almost completely unconsciously. The second she did so, Kusunoki Yua's consciousness, right on the verge of fading, instantly became clear, as though her haze had been dispelled from her mind. It was like a vision, maybe. Kind of like how, oh, I was gonna say, it's like what Shogun tried to do with, tried with the Scrabble station things. Like, you put them in an emotional state to make them reach for it. And but he probably did it through a delusion. There was an invisible yet fierce impact. Her sister, rained upon by showering red lights akin to petals, was blown away. Languidly standing up as she gasped for air, Yua looked at what she was holding and instantly doubted her eyes. Oh, look at this. It was a sword. All too elegant, all too sharp, like the glass worn by one, like the wit shown by the other. All too immaculate, all too vigorous. All too delicate, all too profound, its frame easy to fracture, its nature veiled. Oh, it's so poetic and pretty. I feel like she's getting way more of an introduction with the sword than anyone else has. And so beautiful, it beckoned tears from all who laid eyes upon it. Dang. That's so cool. It's so pretty, too. The object now in her hands, it reminded Yua of Ayase's sword that she'd seen in the overpass, and the sword the band had spoken of, Senna's.
今のは何？
Mia, after being blown away by the mysterious impact, had been buried in the shrubbery. As she held her head, she freed herself from it and crawled back to her feet.
あなたは何をしたの？私はミヤちゃん。私やっとわかったわ。どうしてここまで一生懸命あなたの死の真相を調べていたのか。
Yeah.
私を殺そうとしたの？私はまた殺されるところだったの？また？結局私はあなたが怖かったのよ。当てつけに死なれたと思ったの。あなたがわからなかったの。あなたが死んだ理由は私のせいじゃないって証明して安心したかった。最低のお姉ちゃんね。どうして死んでくれないのよ。
She could no longer get through to her. The two selves, once together in the beginning, now had diverged completely, never to return to one again. Mia reached to grab her once more, reminded of the pain she had experienced before. Yua's trembles of dread returned, leading her to... Oh. Brandished her sword, it carved a sharp trail, and then cut the ghost in half. Mia's movements came to a halt, and with a look of shock on her face, she traced the wound of gouged flesh with her hand, beginning from the left side of her torso and ending all the way to her right shoulder. No blood sprang forth.
ミヤちゃんは2ヶ月前に死にました。それならあなたは誰なんですか？
Yeah. Countless particles large enough to be seen by the naked eye came flowing out from within Mia. Her body, now enveloped in bubbles, gradually collapsed to the ground as her silhouette faded and faded. It was now transforming into something else. Yua, with feelings of incredulity, saw what it was. After a moment's wait, a man with an impressively large physique appeared in Mia's place. He was wearing a denim shirt, jeans, and a rucksack on his back. Yua had never seen the man before. It's the machine. It's one of those guys with the machines.
誰どうしてミアちゃんの姿にどうやって
Yua backed away in confusion, still holding her D-sword. The man was similarly bewildered. He had likely not predicted that he would be uncovered, leaving him to act in a very clearly frantic manner.
お前こそなんでまさかこのガキギガロマニアックスか聞いてないぞくそどうしたら
And then, ignoring gravity itself, it came flying in, its path almost horizontal. By the time the man looked behind him, it had already perforated the rucksack on his back. And from that same rucksack, a pale flash of light surged. The man, as though he just received an electric shock, stiffened up like a pole. His eyes shot open wide, and only a moment later he lost consciousness, falling face first to the ground. He foamed at the mouth, and every so often his body would twitch. The object that had pierced his rucksack was a sword quite like the one Yua had obtained just a moment ago, with the beautiful curves adorning its every edge. That looks like Ayase's sword.
これ
That makes sense, she's here. Yua remembered the sword, she'd seen it once before. A single presence approached her. Yua raised her head. Someone then emerged from the darkness.
何事
Yeah!
かと思ったらこんな騒ぎになっていたのね岸本さん
Without a change in her expression, Ayase glanced at the sword Yua held in her hands.
感じる大いなる意志を私がこの病院に居続けた意味はこういうことだったんだ
Oh, interesting. She's like, she believes her path has been fated, and she came here specifically to help Yua.
え
Yua had sunk into the ground dumbfoundedly. As Ayase picked up the glasses that had fallen near her, crouched down in front of Yua, and peered at the girl's face. Then, with her slender fingers, she brushed Yua's hair aside and gently put her glasses back in place.
君もグラジオールの黒騎士だったのね
And with that, Ayase gave a faint, transient smile. Dang.
僕を殺してくれないか
Nanami's face stiffened, but shortly after that, she put on a clearly forced smile.
お兄つまんない冗談やめなよ
That reaction wasn't like her. Normally, she wouldn't just laugh it off. Normally, she'd angrily yell, "Don't say that, you dumb jerk," and then spend the next few minutes reprimanding me. Well, not that it mattered. I didn't care. If she wouldn't kill me, I had no more business with this Nanami. She could just up and vanish for all I cared. Wait a minute. Nanami. His sister, right? But he's a delusion, and he's worried about her being a delusion. Is it possible that Nanami is Rimi? But then, no, Rimi made it sound like she was talking to Nanami, so maybe not. But I was like, what if they are the same person? Because like the role that they take up is very similar. Rimi being the guardian friend and Nanami being the doting sister. Like, you put all of the rest of it aside, they're both trying to be guardians who care for him despite his rejection and his abuse of them. I don't know. There's something to that. I locked eyes with Saratan. If only Saratan were the third dimension, she would have gladly granted my wish. If I was going to be born a delusionary existence anyway, at least let me be born a second dimension.
ねえそんな冗談は置いといてその話があるんだ
Oh boy.
あのねお兄にもらったバングルなくしちゃったのどうせ適当に扱ってたんだろうとか言わないでねナナそんなことしてないもん本当に大切にしてたもん
Aww.
なのにどこでなくしたのかもわかんなくて
What, you treasured it? Seriously? Incredible. Genuinely fetching incredible. Comedy gold, really. Besides, I gave it to you, didn't I? So it's worthless anyway.
僕は妄想じゃない。僕は妄想じゃない。
Besides, the fact that I'd given Nanami the bangle in and of itself was suspicious. It could have been a delusion too, for all I knew. That was why nothing in this world was worth anything. Each and everything in my memories was worthless.
僕は妄想じゃない。
Kai,
僕は妄想じゃない。
he's so broken.
お兄が初めてくれたプレゼントだったのにな。なんでなくしちゃったりしたんだろう。
僕は妄想じゃない。僕は妄想じゃない。
お兄、聞いてる？
僕は妄想じゃない。僕
It's so
は
loud.
妄想じゃない。
お兄はどうしていつもそうなの？
Her head hung low, and her fists clenched tightly. Nanami let out a faint whisper.
たまにはお兄ちゃんらしく頼りがいのあるとこ見せてよ。
Aww. What now? If you're here to criticize me, you're wasting your time. After all, I'm a delusionary existence.
僕は妄想じゃない。僕は妄想じゃない。
All I did was stare blankly at Saratan's smile. There was no reason to listen to Nanami. It was all pointless. After all, it was a delusionary existence.
今までずっとナナがしっかりしなきゃって思って頑張ってきたけど、でもね、やっぱりナナだってたまには誰かに甘えたいよ。うん。誰かにじゃなくて
Dang.
お兄に甘えたいよ。
僕は妄想じゃない。
Come on, dude. Wake up a little bit.
僕は妄想じゃない。
だってお兄はナナのお兄なんだから、お兄に頼りたいって思うことナナにもあるんだよ。
僕は妄想じゃない。僕は妄想じゃない。
そりゃいつもああしろこうしろ言われてお兄も嫌だろうけど、それはお兄がだらしないから仕方なく。言いたいことはそういうことじゃなくて。
僕は妄想じゃない。僕は妄想じゃない。
ナナだっていろいろ愚痴を聞いてもらいたい時とか泣きたい時とかあるんだよ。お兄に優しくしてもらいたい時とかあるんだよ。
僕は妄想じゃない。僕は妄想じゃない。
ねえ、お兄、
Aww.
ナナの話聞いてよ。ナナ、今すごく悲しいんだよ。お兄にもらった大切なバングルなくなっちゃって、声出して泣きたいくらい悲しくて辛くて。
Like, people might think this is like a sad thing, but it actually is not too far from reality. Because what happens is we build up emotions over time. And like there's that saying, the straw that breaks the camel's back. It's really real. Sometimes it's a really relatively small thing that finally tips that scale. Now, I don't know if Nanami's real. It's sad that I can't even like conceptualize an idea that might be fake there, but like it's really worth thinking about. Like, this is something she's wrestling with her whole life, most likely, especially her teenage years. She desperately reaches out and tries to support her brother, hoping that someday he'll show a little bit of reciprocation. She's telling herself that the fact that he still comes out with her or talks to her are like little signs that he does care, even if he's rude or dismissive. And like a part of her always hoped that someday he'd just rise up and kind of be even partially a sibling like she wanted and dreamed of having. That's a real thing that people can experience, that, you know, wanting your family to be there for you, or Maybe even like seeing other families and the way they interact and like pondering in your heart, your mind, like, why isn't my family like that? Why does mine feel so broken? The truth is most families are broken in some way or another. Just some are surface level and some aren't. But that doesn't change how that feeling is, right? And so that's kind of what I feel like she's trying to express here. And I do feel like that feels so legitimate. I'd be so sad if she's a delusion. I'm kind of hoping that she's real.
お兄に抱きしめてほしいのに、お兄に頭撫でて慰めてほしいのに。ねえ、お兄、今日だけはナナのわがまま受け止めてよ。
Come on, bro. Even if you are a delusion, why can't you just do that? Like, shouldn't that be a motivation? Be like, wait, if I'm a delusion, and if she's a delusion, it doesn't matter. But if I'm a delusion and she's not, then I can be there. I can matter. Raising my head in a daze, I saw Nanami crying. She was hanging her head low, and while she was trying her best to hold them in, tears ran down her pained face all the same. So sad. It just ends there? Oh. Alright, we'll go a little bit longer. Upon opening the glass door, the very moment Rimi entered what appeared to be a lobby, a twitch of fear ran through her. Again, look at this. Look at that stance. Look at those. It looks like she has two. Like I said that before, like it looks like she has two of them. Why is it two of them for her? A chill breeze, cold enough to freeze her over, crept up her legs. There was no sign of anyone. In fact, it was obvious that for this place and this place alone, and yet when Rimi thought about what awaited her ahead, she could not help but wish that someone could have been there with her. Before her was a soundproof door, a door akin to that of a movie theater. From a small crack within the gateway, a chill breeze came wafting through. The breeze was accompanied by a white haze, a haze akin to the smoke that rose from dry ice. Rimi fiercely bit down on her lip, and her hands towards her D-sword, already real booted.
だから大丈夫。だから怖がっちゃダメだ。
Desperately telling herself that, she gulped a single time before proceeding to burst open the soundproof door with her shoulder. Okay. Is this the Noah? Rimi's eyes went wide at the scene she saw before her. There stood a device that was beyond enormous. Enshrined in the center of a dome-shaped room, it could be described only as a monster. An ominous sound rang faintly throughout the spacious room. It was a low-pitched noise akin to a deep growl of a beast. A sound that signified the device's operation.
Noah 2。
Noah 2.
もう動いてるんだ。
君のおかげですよ。
A voice replied to Rimi's vexed murmurs. The moment she heard that voice, Rimi felt her very soul tremble.
Sakihata Rimi. 1年半ぶりですね。
That's about how long that Taku has been in a delusion, apparently. Rimi's instinct was to be engulfed in fear. Shivers rose from the depths of her heart. Abominable memories attacked her consciousness. Her grim past was on the brink of being resurrected. To endure such a threat, Rimi strengthened the grasp on her D-sword and lightly shook her head. Once she regained her hold, she shifted her gaze toward the voice. Right beside the enormous device, Noah 2 was him, the figure of a man donned in a suit, and by his side... Oh, fetch. Holy crap. So wait, then who's with us? Oh gosh. It was Nishijo Nanami held captive. Her uniform was torn and bandaged, soaked through with blood, was wrapped around her right wrist. Her head hung toward the floor. She looked terribly, terribly pale. Faced with such a pitiable state, Rimi was at a loss for words. Crucified, the Jesus of Nazareth's likeness. No. What held her now could not be called a cross. It was something far different, for it took the shape of a pure, unadulterated malice. The entirety of this world's evil. The entirety of this world's disorder. The entirety of this world's immorality. It would be no exaggeration to refer to it as a symbol sculpted in those very attributes.
君がこの1年半 どこで何をしていたかについて興味はありませんが。
I want to say this. It's not showing much of her right arm, right? It just kind of stops. And you can also see, like, there's odd patterns in the background of the image. It's making me wonder, are they implying that her whole arm is gone? Or did it show her splayed out, like, arms out either side, like it's, like, describing, but, like, you could see her missing hand? But maybe that was deemed too gruesome and was edited for the Steam version. I hate that I have to, like, question that, but it's always a possibility.
困りますね。あまりうろちょろされると。
The man, Norose Genichi, spoke in a peaceful tone, but his voice was embedded with the sharpness of a blade. Doing everything in her power not to sink to her knees, Rimi glared back at Norose.
ナナちゃんを離して。
ほう。まさかここに来たのは、お友達を助けに来たという理由ですか？
ナナちゃんを離して。その子は何も関係ないでしょ。
では直接話してみてはどうですか？
Nodose's offer left Rimi confused. She was acting brave, but in truth, the moment she had seen Nodose's face, her heart had been seized by fear and her legs had begun to tremble. Unable to move an inch from where she stood, she called out to the crucified Nanami.
ナナちゃん。
Nanami's head ever so slightly stirred. Her eyes, which had been closed up until that very moment, opened faintly, and she raised her head, and hollow eyes fell on Rimi.
リミさん。大丈夫？今、助けてあげるから。
In the middle of Rimi's sentence, Nanami's face twisted in pain. Her face was pale and her breathing labored.
痛いよ。右手が痛いの。
Then, with very little resistance, Nanami's body slid off the cross.
ナナちゃん。ねえ、リミさん。
Without getting up from the floor, Nanami lifted her head and her gaze roamed around the room. It was as if she was searching for something.
ナナのバングル知らないかな。
So she also was upset about the bangle. What's up with that?
見つからなくて。ナナのバングルどこにもなくて。
She staggered to her feet, and this time she searched her surroundings with her left hand.
バングルだね。わかった。私知ってるから。だから私と一緒にここを出よう。病院に行こう。ね。手が痛いよ。
Dang. Fetch, this is dark.
ナナはなんでリミさんのことを知ってるんだっけ。前にどこで会ったんだっけ。
Though this sounds like Rimi's a delusion too.
リミさんなの。リミさんがナナのバングル。嘘。どうして。ひどいよ。
Oh. Is it real though? Was Rimi the one who like put her in this state? Rimi, who realized that something was wrong with Nanami, instantly looked at Nodose. With a scornful grin painted on his face, he simply observed Rimi and Nanami's exchange.
ナナちゃんに何を見せてるの。
Nanami's gaze was fixed on Rimi. Trembling like a newborn fawn, she slowly stood up and then she held out her right wrist and offered Rimi her palm. A bandage drenched in blood, it almost appeared as if her hand was still connected. And yet, one after another, vibrant scarlet drops fell from the bandage without reprieve. But her feet, a pool of blood, grew larger and larger with each passing second. She needs medical attention fast. But despite how frantic she was, Rimi was unable to get any closer, for getting closer to Nanami mean getting closer to that man. It frustrated her greatly, leaving her on the verge of tears.
リミさんが持ってたの。ナナちゃん、帰ろう。こっちに来て。どうして持ってくの？返して。ナナのバングル、返して。落ち着いて、ナナちゃん。お兄からもらったナナの
Uh-oh. Together with her pained scream. Oh! A single drop of blood fell from her right wrist. Before I had the opportunity to hit the ground, the drop crystallized at high speed. Originating from nothing but the drop at its center, the mineral-esque object burst into view. It was as if a carapace formed from minerals had ripped through the rift in space. In the blink of an eye, it took shape. Oh, baby, look at that one. That's horrifying. But so she does have her hand. It resembled a cross far more than the object had previously held Nanami. Or perhaps it was a sword which pierced itself with perpendicularity, as if rejecting all.
これはディソード返してよお願い
And Nanami, as if embracing it, held it close to her chest. Tears born from all the sadness within her fell upon it. Her D-sword flickered scarlet as if one with her pulse.
でないとリミさんのこと許さない
Oh no.
そんな
Oh no.
ナナちゃんも気ガロマニアックスだったの
Oh, fetch me. There's everywhere! Well, no, it's not everywhere. It's just everyone we interact with.
今日だけは
Then who are you?
ナナのわがまま受け止めてよ
God, what is happening? Why are there like two people? Like, so she must be a delusion, right? The other one, that one's got to be the real one because she has a D sword, but that doesn't make sense because we might have a D sword. So delusions can have D swords, but who is this one? God, what's happening? I saw Nanami crying. She was hanging her head low, and while she was trying her best to hold them in, tears ran down her pained face all the same. I took one look at her, and then I returned my gaze to the ceiling, resuming my mission of counting rusted spots. You suck!
抜かれたって、僕には何もできないよ。僕は妄想の存在なんだから、妄想の。
そんなこと言わないでよお兄が妄想のはずないじゃんだってナナは小さい頃のお兄のこと知ってるもんいっつもナナに世話かけさせてちっとも頼りにならないけどでもお兄は昔からずっとナナと一緒だったよ
Wait, she was right. It was just as she said. I had memories from when Nanami was little. I had memories of her from my childhood. I had memories of watching the news reporting on the bus accident my classmates had been in, the one that happened on the field trip I hadn't been able to go to. I even remember my teacher, Mr. Saito, who had passed away in the accident. The words of Rimi, a total stranger, or the words of Nanami, who I grew up with. It went without saying which to believe. The right person to believe wasn't Rimi. The right person to believe was Nanami. Even though that's probably actually not true. If Nanami was real, that meant I too was real.
Nanami.
I extended my hands toward her. Nanami's existence was one of my only hope, my sole existence that would save me.
助けて。Nanami. 助けて。
If Nanami's warmth were real, then I could prove that I was real too. Nanami, who had been crying for loneliness, wiped away her tears, looked at me with her reddened eyes, smiled at me with her tearful smile, and...
抱きしめてくれる
I nodded, then again and again, then once more. By doing so, if I could save Nanami, by doing so I could save myself. Save Nanami, save the world! I would gladly hug this bratty little sister of mine, no matter how many time or place. I would hug my one and only sister in the world, the one that shared my blood.
Nanami. 助けて。
I wanted to feel her warmth as soon as I could, so I opened my arms to welcome her into my chest. I prepared to hug her. Tightly, ever so tightly.
お兄
But right at that very moment, of course... What the fetch? Nanami's body was enveloped in a faint light, and she burst into countless blue particles. One after another, the particles burst like bubbles in the air. The air in which my arms remained extended, never receiving the hug I so desired, my chest never feeling the warmth I so desired. Right before my very eyes, Nanami had vanished. God, he'd almost had hope. That's so cruel. That's just freaking malicious. Holy crap. A little longer. With only her left hand, Nishijo Nanami tightly embraced the D-sword that had been born of her own blood. Her right arm, meanwhile, only lay upon it. Her blood seeping from the bandage on her right wrist slowly ran down the sword's fuller.
痛い。知ってたの？ナナちゃんがギガロマニアックスだって。
Rimi's question was directed at Norose, who had evidently chosen to remain a spectator. No matter how much Rimi glared his way, he always retained the same composed look on his face.
偶然の産物というものですよ。
ナナちゃんにひどいことしたくせに、何が偶然なの？
君の時のような苦労はしませんでした。我が社にはすでに覚醒させるためのマニュアルが確立していますから。
Oh, great. So maybe the company's been the one doing it the whole time. And then what about the real Taku, though? That's a real thing, Shogun.
もっとも、西条匠にだけはそのマニュアルも通用しませんが。
Oh, interesting.
イレギュラーな化け物は扱いづらいことこの上ない。
化け物だなんて言わないで。
君も化け物だからですか？
そういう話はしてない。
虚無から生まれたものだからと言い換えた方が良かったですね。
So yeah, so Rimi is a delusion too. She and Taku are both delusions. Averting her gaze, Rimi bit her lip in frustration. Her trembling had yet to cease. In direct opposition to her wish to save Nanami, her legs refused to move. It was as if they'd taken root inside the floor. Norose, meanwhile, caressed Nanami's head almost lovingly, acting as if it was under no threat whatsoever. Nanami had no reaction to this. She simply hung her head low as she repeatedly drew shallow breaths.
闇のある一点だけを灯しているスポットライト。その周囲には無数の死体が転がっているのでしょうが、誰にも見えない。君自身にもです。
そんな話やめて。
例えば君が自殺をしたら、スポットライトは数十センチ横にずれて、君を闇で覆ってくれるでしょう。そして、何も知らない別の誰かが、代わりにスポットライトを浴びる。
Oh, is he actually trying to push like the delusion Taku to like ending himself for that reason? Prompted by Rimi's sharp tone, Norose shrugged his shoulders and returned to silence.
痛い。ナナちゃんを解放してほしいんだけど。
拘束は解きましたが。
連れて帰る。
構いませんよ。もう用済みです。
ナナちゃん、帰ろう。その件は消して。だったら、バングル返して。返すから。
Rimi knew where Nana's hand was being kept on that day. On the night Nanami's hand had been delivered to Takumi's room, after Takumi had collapsed from sheer humiliation on the roof of O-Front, Rimi had retrieved the hand from within the refrigerator. Shogun was the one who had it now. It was in cold storage to keep it from decomposing. The bangle, too, was... So that implies that Nanami was real for the most part of this story. Nanami's voice, which had only been speaking in incoherent mumbles, was gradually growing more and more intense.
落ち着いて深呼吸して。自分をしっかり持って。
一つ聞きますが。
Norose suddenly interrupted, eliciting a click from Rimi's tongue, though only her mind.
西条匠にとっては、君たち二人のうち、どちらがより重要度が高い存在ですか？
Rimi cast her eyes downward.
リミさんなんか。
While Nanami instead raised her head, a sparkle returned to her once empty eyes, a glaring brilliant shine, one that warranted only a single descriptor, abnormal. Uh-oh. She's broken. In a panic, Rimi frantically attempted to brace herself, only to be frozen in place by the sudden darkness. It was as if all the lights had been turned off. Rimi had no way of knowing whether it had been intentional or accidental.
負けちゃダメ。
Rimi whispered so in an attempt to encourage herself. Her voice made the air undulate, but it melted herself into the dark before long. She then noticed that she no longer could hear Noah 2's growling rumbles. I hate the dark. It always reminds me of back then. Rimi tried looking around, but all she could see was darkness spread throughout every corner. No speck of concept known as light existed. Could she not see because it was dark, or was it perhaps because her sight was not working properly? She had even lost the ability to tell up from down. She could not tell whether she was anymore. Her 5 senses had been eroded by darkness, and now her body was unable to recognize anything. As if her body had been turned into gas. As if her consciousness had slipped away from its vessel. Past and present fused to one, and Rimi's memories began to intermix. Where was now? Where was the past? Oh boy. Then in the world ruled only by sheer darkness, a single ray of light shone down. And there within that circular spotlight was Rimi, cradling her knees close to her chest. Rimi was seeing this very scene from within the darkness. It's the same as back then. Back then, Rimi had nothing. Before she knew it, she had been confined and tortured, but rather than anything physical, the psychological pain she suffered had been far greater. A daily life born from the depths of hell, a daily life constantly consisting solely of enduring. How she'd been before that, Rimi did not know. When and how she'd been confined, for how long had she been tortured? That Rimi did not know, but something told her that it was not due to memory loss. The moment she suddenly opened her eyes, a consciousness known to herself had been born, or so she felt. Perhaps the one inhabiting this body before her, unable to escape from all the pain, had ended its own life within her delusion. And then, perhaps as a new her, a new personality, the current Rimi had been born. Perhaps there had been a countless other hers before her. Even the names Sakihata Rimi must have been different each time. To myself, I don't exist. Something moved amid the darkness. Rimi stood up and slowly began moving toward it, and as she moved, so did the spotlight. And what she found was a dead Rimi laying on the ground without ever looking at Rimi. A whisper flowed from Rimi's mouth.
あなたは何番目？
Oh boy.
私は。
So if Rimi's a delusion and Taku's a delusion, then the idea is that if they give up, if they give in to despair, they can be reborn as a different personality or a different version of themselves. Also, by the way, no, my thoughts about the editing. Nope, it's there. There's her stump. That's terrifying. Rimi's eyeballs twitched incessantly, and an endless amount of tears ran down from the corners of her eyes. Her D-sword then slipped from her hands, and Rimi sank to the floor. Much like a child would, she covered her face with her hands and weakly shook her head. I'm sorry. I couldn't do it. Nanami stared at her with a vacant look on her face, while Nodose let out a short, disinterested snort. Jeez. Oh boy. Nanami had vanished without a trace. She had turned into bubbles before my very eyes. Her substance had been simply ceased to exist.
どこだよ。出てきてよ。
Okay, I gotta admit, I feel like he was snapping pretty quickly, but I feel like that would break me too. I don't think I'd survive mentally this. This is just the worst.
いるんだろう。また、いたずらか。隠れてるんだ。やめろよ。
Can you imagine trying to record these lines? My vision grew blurry from my tears. No matter how many times I wiped them away, the lukewarm droplets kept pouring out. Both this warmth and the feelings made me shed these tears, or delusions. I myself was one, after all. Nanami had been a delusion. I'd been stupid to believe it would be okay. My hopes have been crushed just like that.
で、いつ、この妄想って冷めるの？早く冷めてよ。
Not even I knew what I was talking to, but right now I was fine with anyone. Just wanted to be heard.
この妄想が冷めたら、僕は本当はイケメンなんだ。そうに決まってる。物分かりのいい妹と、優しい姉がいるんだ。かわいい彼女と付き合ってて、その子がリミとかセナみたいな電波女じゃなくて、セーラさんみたいないい子なんだ。
あなたは妄想の存在なんだよ。
Groveling on the floor, I buried my head in my mountain of trash and tightly gripped Sierra-tan. I tried my best to avert my eyes from reality as I pounded the floor with my fist, but I couldn't. Rimi's words pummeled my mind relentlessly.
死にたい。死にたいよ。どうして誰も僕を殺してくれないんだ。ねえ、セーラタン殺して、僕を殺して。
そんなに死にたいの？
死にたい。こんなのもう嫌だ。自分の存在が嫌だ。何も考えたくない。生きていたくない。
かわいそうなタッキー。だったら、すぐに殺される方法を教えてあげる。
Oh, our helpful little fairy. Cool. So good. So good. Ah, this is why you're my waifu. Sierra-tan always devoted herself to me, commendably so.
とりあえず、外に出るんさ。
外に？
Doing as I was told, I stood up and headed for the door. Then after nearly tripping and falling over trash countless times, I exited my base. I had no need to question her. Sierra-tan would never betray me. This is my waifu after all. She wasn't 3D. Once I was outside, a strange sound hit my ears. The sound. I hadn't heard it somewhere before?
この音を追いかけて。
追いかけたら殺してもらえるの？
そういうこと。
優しく殺してもらえるかな？
私が保証するよ。
Schmuckums.
よかった。やっと死ねる。
The sound was my messiah, the bell of salvation that would grant me passage to the promised land. With Sierra-tan in hand, I set off toward the sound. Okay. Alright, it's been a long episode. I know this isn't the greatest part to end, but I feel like I really should. I really need to. I'm running out of time, frankly. So we're gonna end here, even though it's kind of crappy, but... Oh, so much just happened. Holy crap. I almost forget some of the insanity. We start off with Ban getting killed by Sua, or at least I think he was killed. Yuna was almost killed by a delusion of her sister. She almost jumped off the edge, but she acquired a D-sword, and Ayase helped her. And we found out that delusion was purposely given to her, probably because she was investigating things and getting too close with Ban. But it was purposely provided by the guy with the backpack. Then we find that Rimi is going to save the real Nanami, who also has a D-sword and is like been broken, having her hand cut off, and is being like trapped with the Noah too. But Rimi's also a delusionary person, and it turns out that there's been multiple versions of her. cycling through time, I guess, like while they experimented on her, because she was probably the first delusional being to be realized or realize. Like, what is it called when they bring something into reality? Like whatever that is. I imagine that Taku created her and made her a reality. They figured out what she was, and they've been experimenting on her. And that's how they learned about these delusional beings. And then a Taku delusional being appeared. Whether that was Taku original or it was created by the Nozuma Corporation, we don't know yet. And then we see that, like, real Nanami has a D sword, and it's just so much. And now there's a festival, and Grim is like encouraging him to follow like the festival that's going on. I feel like it's Nozomi's, like they're building something to try and get him to pull a D sword again, or to make him like off himself, because that also might achieve their goals, it sounds like. Or at least it's like, because they failed to get him to pull the D sword when they provided the perfect like environment for it, they might be trying to reset him, if that's what happens when a delusional person like dies, especially if they end themselves. Then they kind of are reborn with a new personality, like something similar but not quite the same. And that rebirth process might give them another chance. So, yeah, it's a lot. I have no clue if I'm even remotely on track. I don't think you should spoil it too much, because I feel like they're still going to reveal some more, but that's what I'm going for right now. That's my piecing together of all these thoughts and like what people have said up until now. That's a lot. So I need to take a breather. Especially because I'm running out of time. I got to do some other stuff. So thank you all so much for joining me today. Thank you so much for joining me on the channel and for being a part of this journey and for joining me for this great experience. It means the world to me that you're here. So thank you. And hopefully you enjoyed it enough that you'll come back for the next episode. Especially thank you to the patrons, the members who have been continuing to support me. I really appreciate that. I hope that I continue to make content that's worth bringing you back, that you find interesting and engaging, and that we can always continue these stories throughout, you know, the weeks and weeks as go by. You know, it can be something that breaks up your monotony and it lets you kind of enjoy a good story together. But at this point, I suppose, it's time to say goodbye, so thank you. And until the next video you watch with me or happen to see me in next, I'll see you there.